Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a wonderful, wonderful show for you today. Dr. Ron Unbar is joining us to celebrate the Life Guide for Teens, harnessing your inner power to be healthy, happy, and confident. Later in the show, we'll be speaking to Wayne McDaniel. He is celebrating Children of the Great Light. And we're going to be taking a listen back to our conversation with Stanetta Anthony, celebrating A Home for Sally. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Join us right now from San Diego in California. Our guest is here today to celebrate his really important book. It's called The Life Guide for Teens, Harnessing Your Inner Power to be Healthy, Happy, and Confident. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Ron Unbar. Hey, Dr. Ron, how are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well. I appreciate it.
You know, Life Guide for Teens, this sounds like it should be a life guide for everyone.
That's right. A good life starts in your teen years, and if you keep going, you can live to 100.
Well, I'm certainly well past my teen years, but maybe I can learn something and I'm almost 100. Maybe I can learn something to get over the finish line there. Tell us about the book. Just give us a kind of 30,000 feet view.
Well, the book discusses 5 keys to a good life. Sleep, adequate sleep, exercise, good diet, social life, and finding a purpose in your life. That's the 5 keys. And this is true as a teenager, is true as an 85-year-old. Without purpose, without taking care of your body, you won't be around very long, especially the latter end of life. And then...
Go ahead.
So then the book discusses 3 tools that you can use on your way to those 5 keys. And the tools are, I'll just tell them we can discuss in greater length, using positive self-talk, learning how to calm yourself, and learning to hear your inner self, which can be a source of great wisdom.
This sounds too good to be true.
We make our own reality, Jed.
Uh-huh.
We make our own reality. How we look at things affects what happens to us. For example, if you think things are going to go poorly, and then you don't even make an effort, and then things go poorly, you said, aha, I knew they would go poorly, and there it happened. And you get into a vicious cycle. But the opposite is also true. If you think things can go well, and you open your mind up to things going well, they are much more likely to happen for you. And then you say, aha, my life is good. We create our own reality.
I'm a big proponent of what you're saying. I think it makes total sense. And one of the things that I'm really happy about is that science seems to be catching up with some of these common sense or old style wisdoms that have been passed down from generation to generation. Now we're finally able to see and go, yep, we got some science here to back that up.
That is correct. The science of sleep, we now know, shows that disrupted sleep not only affects growth in children, but it affects your immune system. It affects your mood. It affects whether you get cancer or not. And science is showing this. And of course, people, I think, are well aware of the science of good nutrition. So when your mother said, eat your vegetables, there's a reason for that. And exercise, of course, even just walking half an hour a day at a moderate pace can be life prolonging.
Yeah. Well, the exercise thing is something, thankfully, that I put into my life in a big way. We played sports back in high school and college. But then when I go to work out, I say, I only used to run when I was punished, when I did something wrong in my sport. And why am I punishing myself? Thankfully, I get over that in a couple of years and have been exercising ever since. And I agree. It's a super part of your life. One of the keys that you were talking about was purpose. I think that is so important. I've seen a lot of people my age, when they retire and they don't have a purpose, their quality of life really declines very quickly. In fact, I've known people who pass away months after they retire. So I absolutely, I know it's important for old folks, but I guess it's also very important for young folks.
Well, the key in even teens, they're trying to find their purpose. And that sometimes it's not perfectly clear when you're young what you're going to do. But one purpose that everybody can understand is be kind to one another, help other people. And most kids, if they listen to their inner selves, realize that. And then they can practice kindness, practice compassion.
How do we learn how to listen to our inner selves? Because, we hear all these messages. How do we know how to discern which one of the things that we're hearing is on the right path?
Well, one of the key to this is to listen and have quiet time. In modern age, if you have a brief moment, you're going to go on your phone and start entertaining yourself with texts and videos and the like. But to hear yourself, you have to be quiet and listen. So you could do that by sitting in a place and just quieting your mind, or you could take a walk outside and see what thoughts come, or you can listen to quiet music that can allow thoughts to come through. I'm not talking about rap or very loud music that captures your mind. You need to give yourself a chance to hear that inner voice. We all have it. Many of us never hear it, we don't realize we hear it.
Do teens and kids, do they know how important it is to have a purpose?
Older teens learn that purpose is important. In fact, sometimes I meet older teens in an existential crisis early on in life. They're saying, what's the point? I'm never going to amount to anything. And so we have to work through that. Every person is precious. Every person can do amazing things in life. But sometimes when you're young and inexperienced, you don't see all the possibilities. But an average teen might not even think about purpose. They'll just live their life. They want to get happy. They want to party. They want to use drugs, unfortunately, just to have a good time. And unfortunately, society doesn't give us good role models, a lot of good role models for finding a purpose. But I find the teens who are happiest and fulfilled are the ones who start developing a purpose. And as I said, kindness, volunteering in a soup kitchen, reading to underprivileged kids are ways that can be very fulfilling even in the teen years.
Boy, that is true. One of the things that I did in high school was volunteer to help tutor kids at an elementary school that was adjacent to the high school I was attending, and it brought me a great joy to my life.
I agree. But I think we've frozen a little bit, perhaps.
We didn't freeze on this end, but that's okay. Tell me, how did you get? You are a pediatric pulmonologist. Am I right about that?
That is correct.
So you're dealing with kids and helping them through respiratory crises and helping to make sure that their respiratory systems are healthy. And how did you get into writing this book?
Oh, that's a fun answer. So I was practicing as a pulmonologist 25 years ago, and I had a young man who was very allergic to milk products. He had asthma. He also developed life-threatening breathing problems if he was exposed to a milk product. And he said to me, lately, when I've been smelling cheeseburgers, I've been developing asthma attacks. I thought that was rather strange. So I said to him, can you imagine eating a cheeseburger? So he closed his eyes, and within seconds, he couldn't breathe. He was struggling to breathe. And I said to myself, oh no, he's going to have a really bad breathing attack. Stop it. And he did. And I said, you're kidding me. No, I couldn't breathe. That was my asthma, he said. I said, whoa. And I immediately started thinking, if you can think your way into illness, can you think your way out? And that was the power of the mind. So the answer is yes, you can, using your mind, you can do a lot of amazing things, including become healthier.
Yeah. This is, that must have been a really powerful moment for you. What did you do? What was the next steps after you saw that happen with this young man?
Well, the next step was to think, if this boy can get sick by his thoughts, I should teach him how to control his thoughts better. And I didn't know anything about this, so I found a psychologist in the community who would be willing to work with him. And I said to the young man, go work with a psychologist, learn how to regulate your mind, and then come teach me. I'm interested. And in my background, I had a major in psychology as well as biology when I was in college. And my patient, whose name was Paul, he said, I'm not crazy. I don't want to see a psychologist. I want to work with you. And I said, that's very nice, but I don't know anything about this. He said, I don't care. So I went to my friend, the psychiatrist at Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, where I used to live, and I asked him would he back me up, and he said he would. So I started meeting with Paul, the patient, and I started reading about self-regulation, self-hypnosis. Hypnosis means using your imagination to help yourself. Started reading about that, and then I would test it out with Paul, who was really good with his imagination, and he was my first teacher for a good year. I learned from him.
That really is amazing. How did he react to it? Did he buy into the idea that, Dr. Ron has something here?
He was very open-minded. I'm very thankful for having been able to work with him. No, he accepted. I find the kids, when you show them what they're capable, they just like learning. I mean, that's what childhood and adolescence is about, is learning new things about yourself. So they're quite open to thinking in new ways. It's the adults who say, I've figured out I need to learn something new. They're much tougher than kids.
So here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, we encourage, obviously we encourage families to read together, especially once our kids become independent readers because there are still so many benefits that kids and teens get from reading and co-reading with their parents. I don't imagine that the best way to incorporate the Life Guide for Teens is for a parent to sit down and say, you got to read this book. You got to change your life. You know, come on now, doctor, on page 5, Dr. Ron's, and you're not doing this.
No, in fact, the nice thing about Life Guide for Teens, it does not have to be read from cover to cover. You don't even have to read a whole chapter. That each chapter has a title like anxiety or fear or getting along with friends, and there's a bunch of tools in every chapter about how to deal with that particular issue. So you just have to read one tool that's like 10 lines or shorter. And then if it makes sense to you, apply it to your life and you'll see benefit. I also have in this book, at the end of each chapter, there's a section for parents telling them what they should and should not do in helping their kids. So one of the things it'll say is, do not tell your kids to read this book because they'll for sure not read it at that point.
Well, you know, if my parents, this is probably too much information, but if my parents wanted me to read something when I was younger, they'd leave it in the bathroom. And there's been a lot of reading going on in bathrooms over the generations, I think.
That's right. Or you can hide it. But again, the problem is today's world, the teens are on their phones and on their tablets. And one of the things I talk to teens about is there's more to life than phones and tablets. And if you spend a lot of time on videos and phones, you don't get much out of life. In fact, I have this kind of discussion starting with young teens. You know, teens think time lasts forever, but you and I know different. And when you're a child, when you're a teenager, that's a time of life you're preparing yourself to do well the rest of your life. And so when you want to ask yourself, should I be engaged in an activity or not? You should ask yourself, will it help me a year from now? Will it help me in 5 years? If the answer is no, then maybe you shouldn't do too much of that. Now, I'll go through this exercise. I'll say, well, is playing video games for an hour, is that helpful in the long run? And teens sometimes will say, well, no, because they know I'm not supposed to play video games. And I say, no, an hour is okay because it gives your mind a break. If you're working really hard and you're taking a break for an hour, that's perfectly fine. But if you spend 5 hours playing video games, what does that help you? Does it help you next month or next year that you played 5 hours of video game? And most kids will say, well, no. And I'll say, and how has it hurt you? And they're not quite sure. And we go through this discussion. We say, first of all, you know, video games are built to make you addicted to them. You realize that, don't you? I say to the teen. You know, they have fast rewards and it feels good. And the problem with that is your brain learns to want a quick reward. And then regular life seems boring. So one of the problems with playing video games is that not only are you hooked on the games, but you can't get the same kind of pleasure from real life, and then you end up not participating as much. Another problem when you play a lot of video games is that you're not doing anything else to improve yourself. You're not reading my book, The Life Guide for Teens. You're not exercising. You're not socializing in person, which is so important. You know, one of the problems that we have today is that, and this is important for parents of young children to know, that when you are on the video, you're not interacting with other people. Even if you're interacting in video, it's not social interactions in person. I think there's a higher amount of autism in this country because at 2 years of age, when kids learn if I throw sand at someone, they're going to get mad at me. If they don't play in the sandbox, they're not going to learn that. And they're not going to learn it by you telling them that. They have to have the experience. So it's really important for parents of younger kids to keep them away from tablets. Don't use them as a cheap babysitter. It might work, but you get what you pay for. It's hurtful. So I go through this with the teens, and the smart ones will say, yeah, I need to cut back and do. And the ones who don't want to hear it, do what they want to do. They learn the hard way.
Everything that you're saying here, I can back up. And do we know why things like positive self-talk are helpful?
Sure. I actually have a cool demonstration that I talk about in the book, and you can do this at home. So I'll just describe it. We don't have another person to practice with, but if you stretch out your arm like this and have somebody else, you need somebody else there to push down on your arm. And you want to find a balance where they can't push your arm down. And then when you say, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak, and they push down, your arm will go down. You'll be surprised. If you say, I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong, your arm will stay up. That's a demonstration of the power of words. So once I show that, the kid gets it. What I say is what happens. The scientific explanation for it that works is you're sort of telling your brain what you want to do. The brain is like a supercomputer. You tell it what you want, and if it's within its abilities, it's going to follow suit. And so we teach that very early on, and then we talk about positive talk. For example, don't use the word try. Do you know why?
We've talked about it, but tell everybody.
Well, besides what Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try. The problem with the word try is that it leaves room for failure. And if you think about it, if you say that I tried something in the past, you usually mean I didn't succeed. So try is a loser word. So do things. If you want to improve your life, use positive talk. Don't try to use it as an example. If you're doing a new sports, do it.
One of the things that I taught my kids and also my niece is they weren't able to say the words "I can't" unless it was followed with "yet."
Correct. Henry Ford had a great quote about this 100 years ago. He said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. If you think you can do it. If you think you can't do it. Because what you say is what happens. In fact, even the Buddha talked about this 2,700 years ago. He said, what we think is what we become. What we think is what we become. I teach that to the kids.
Now, I'll be honest with you. As I'm listening to this, obviously this is great advice and great exercises for teens. But I'm thinking we could start teaching some of our kids way before they get to their teen years.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important, again, in our society, sometimes parents try to solve problems for their kids because they want the kids to have an easy upbringing or shouldn't suffer. But parents need to understand that solving your own issues is part of growing up. Learning how to deal with hardship is part of growing up. I learned a new term I didn't know about. You probably know about bulldozer parent.
I'm more familiar with helicopter parent, but tell me bulldozer.
So the helicopter parent, hovers over the kid and micromanages everything. The bulldozer parent cleans the path in front of the kid so the kid never faces an obstacle. Okay. How damaging that is, because the child needs to know how to deal with an obstacle. When a child at 2 years of age falls and scrapes his or her knee, have the child. What do you think? Are you okay? And stay calm as a parent. Don't rush over and say, oh, are you okay? You might get infected. Have to wash you out. That's how you teach anxiety. How the parent treats the child affects how the child develops. So parents should stay calm. They obviously need to protect their child. But if it's something a child can deal with on their own, let them. And then as they get older, I teach this stuff to 5 and 6 year olds, that positive talk. They get it. They love it. They go around and say, I'm fast. And then they run the races. Or you could do have the parent pick them up, and kid will say, I'm heavy, and then they can't be picked up as easily.
Oh wow! Oh, that's fascinating. This idea of bulldozer parents. Do you think that is one of the reasons that we are hearing about very young kids and lots of very young kids suffering from anxiety?
I think, anxiety, there's many, many causes. I think the bulldozer parents causes a college kid with trouble because they've never been able to face obstacles and work way through. In the younger age, I think some of the anxiety is caused by the parents' anxiety transmitted to the kid. I gave you the example of the mother who worries about the child scraping his or her knee. One time I worked with this 6-year-old who's afraid to leave the house. So she had anxiety, and I taught her skills like saying to herself that she's safe, and even did some imagination tricks like she can imagine being a superhero and be able to go out. And it worked really well. So then the mother came in, brought her in, and the girl had left her house without permission and was outside playing in the yard. Mother was incensed. Mother says to the child in front of me, "How could you do that? You could have been kidnapped." Now you know why that child has anxiety. So I think in our society, a lot of people have anxiety and then they transmit it to their kids. And I think the social media doesn't help, because one of the problems with social media, things that happen far away, you hear about all the time. There's a school shooting somewhere. There's a cop shooting someone. There's a fire somewhere. Everybody knows about it. It seems like real. In the old days, you would never even hear about it. You know, if you didn't read the newspaper or watch the evening news for half an hour, you weren't even aware of the fires of the school shooting. So we are aware of it. The parents are aware of it. The kids are aware of it. And then they get anxious.
Mention social media. How can we help our kids other than just say, don't go on social media, because they're not going to listen to us, but how can we help them continue to believe in their positive self-talk when they're online and they're seeing these doctored images of beauty and, you know, people saying you're not good enough unless you have this or that, or you're famous or whatever?
Well, I think the kids, you have to talk to your children and explain to them what they see in social media is not real. It's people making things up or showing the best of their life. So I've had kids who are depressed because they think they should be doing much better. It's not unlike pornography, where people think sex should be something that it's not. And then they get the misconception. And unfortunately, kids can get onto social media without their parents' even knowledge. So I think it's really important to talk to your child, go on with them, see what they're viewing. I have parents here, like a kid says to me, my favorite song is so-and-so, and I pull up the song on my computer and start playing it. It's really raunchy. And the mother says, "You listen to that kind of stuff?" Like she wasn't aware. So you need to talk to your kids, be aware, and then have a discussion with them respectfully, telling your child, you may not see this. This is not for you, and guarantees you're going to go for it, right? So explain to them, this song is raunchy, it uses bad words, or this image is exploitative. Explain to them. Kids are smart. You need to treat them with respect, and then they will listen, more apt to listen to you than if you say, well, I know better, you'll understand when you grow up. That's very dismissive and doesn't get great results.
I know myself, when my daughter was in, I think, 8th grade or maybe freshman year of high school, was when the Jersey Shore, that TV show, was debuting. And I was taking a media literacy course from this very wise Catholic nun. And to my surprise, she said, don't ever try to ban something from your kids. It's not going to work. Sit down, experience it with them together, and then talk about it. So I said, let me try this. And so I sat down when my daughter saw these commercials, and I got to see that show. I said, we'll watch it together. And we did. And at the end of the show, we just had a conversation. Well, what do you think? Well, this was funny. That was funny. Well, what do you think about Snooki? What do you think about how she acted? Well, she has absolutely no respect for herself, because if she did, she wouldn't let the guy do this and that. And I'm like, oh, there's something to this. It was really helpful, and opened up years of conversations about media and books and TV and movie with her.
Sounds like your daughter has a very good father.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure, but we do have a wonderful relationship now that she's a very successful young woman. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Life Guide for Teens, Harnessing Your Inner Power to Be Healthy, Happy, and Confident, and also find out more about you and the ways that you are helping kids.
So if they go to my website, dranbar.com, so DRANBAR.com, they will have access to getting the book through Barnes & Noble or Amazon. You can also order it through your local bookstore. On that website, if you explore it, you'll find information about the kind of work I do. There's actually a sample chapter of the book for free on the website. There's also information about hypnosis, which again means using your imagination to help yourself. It's not mind control, anything like that. It's just a different way of giving yourself suggestions. And if you're interested in the story of how I got involved in this hypnosis and imagination world, you can check out my first book, which is called Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, A Journey to the Center. So that's also available on the same website.
And if I know you're in California, but if there's a parent out there, Tennessee or Massachusetts or back in your old stomping grounds in Syracuse, are you able to work with those folks online?
I've been using online therapy for 10 years, so before COVID, because I've been working still in New York. So I'm licensed to practice medicine in the states of New York and California. So if you're in either state, I can work with you. If you're in another state and want information about finding a local therapist, you can feel free to contact me, or you can look up the website of psychologytoday.com. They have a list of excellent therapists around the country.
We've had a really eye-opening time speaking to the author of The Life Guide for Teens, Harnessing Your Inner Power to Be Healthy, Happy, and Confident. Our guest has been Dr. Ron Unbar. Dr. Ron, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish everyone a great year.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures, delightful children's book written by Helen Rogerson. Woofy awakens suddenly to a feeling that his friend Bun needs him. When he arrives at the place his nose leads him, Woofy is confused and doesn't find Bun right away. Then a shout from above leads to an amazing experience as he puts his paleontology skills to work. Together, he, Bun, and a cat that hangs around the site wrap up a wonderful adventure involving a T-Rex skull and a very cool twist of an ending. The story is told in a lyrical style that incorporates actual fossil hunting concepts and vocabulary. If you like dinosaurs, friends who help, and adventures, you will love this book. You can check out Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures and all the Woofy books at unpackyourownhappy.com. Join us right now from the land of Oz, as he told me. Our guest today is here to celebrate Children of the Great Light. Please welcome to the show, Wayne McDaniel. Hey, Wayne, how are you?
Very good. It's good to be here with you.
I'm super happy to have you on here. Tell us about Children of the Great Light, please.
Okay. Well, this is a book that I wrote to introduce what I would call positive spiritual concepts to young children. And when I say that, I mean to give them a positive self-image and view of the divine, but without using religious terms and dogma.
We've had a lot of guests on the show who've written books from different faith perspectives with the message that God loves you, your creator loves you. And I always ask them, would a person from a different faith tradition be able to get something out of this book? And typically they say yes. And I can see why. But obviously a book that talks about being part of something much bigger without the religious wording and culture, it kind of would reach out to everybody.
Yeah, it's really pretty much universal concepts where if anybody who believes that God is love and is everywhere, this should resonate with.
One of the things that I used to love talking about, I've been doing educational magic shows for over 35 years, and most schools want me to talk about building a culture of respect, a bully-free culture in a school. And one of the things I point out to kids is that every faith tradition in culture is kind of built on the same premise that we should treat others the way we want to be treated. We should treat others with love and respect and kindness. And these are lessons that have been passed down for eons from cultures that had no way to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I always I point that out because it's a neat way to be in a public school to say, there's something greater than us out there that put us here on this earth.
Sure. Absolutely.
So what was it that inspired you to write Children of the Great Light?
Well, that's a great question, and it's kind of interesting because I wasn't really planning on writing a children's book. So, I think it's maybe about 4 years ago or so, I was driving home going down I-70 from St. Louis to Lawrence, Kansas, where I live. And I was just thinking, I had several books in my head that I was thinking about writing, and they're all of a spiritual nature, but kind of challenging people to think beyond their normal traditions, maybe a bit, to challenge them a little. But as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, I don't really have any credentials, so why would anybody read this? That is, I was a financial planner. And so, I was never a pastor or ran a nonprofit or anything like that. Didn't go to seminary. And, although I've been very active in spiritual communities during my life, but I just thought, well, who would read it? And yeah, my friends probably would. So then my mind wandered on, and I began to think about my grandchildren, and who were young at the time, still are. They're 3 and 5 now. And then the two thoughts kind of crossed. Well, what if I wrote a book to communicate some of what I think are the most important spiritual elements that a child, or really anybody, should know, and just communicate that in a way that is open, non-judgmental, not using dogma and that type of language in it. And so as I'm driving along there, I write the first story. And the book actually has 3 stories in it. That is, I wrote it in my head, and I knew at the time, well, there needs to be 3 stories, but I had no idea what the other 2 were. But when I got home, I wrote out the first one. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm driving in the car again, and all of a sudden, the second story comes to me. And I write that in my head, and when I get a chance, I type it out. But I still didn't know what the third one was going to be. But guess what? 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm driving in the car, and the third one comes to me. So that's how it came about.
Why 3 stories?
I don't know. Each one is fairly short, and each one communicates a different concept. So I just felt like 3 was the right number.
Yeah. So what are the stories? Can you tell us a little bit about each story?
Sure. Yeah. By the way, you're not using video. I was just going to show a picture of the book here. But it's a beautifully illustrated book. But the first story is called Beginnings. And that's just kind of, it's taking the idea that in the beginning, in the terms I use is the great light as a metaphor for God or the divine, however you want to communicate that. And the great light, out of its love, exploded and created the universe, and eventually decided it wanted children, and so it created the children of the great light, which is basically everybody. But it's, it doesn't matter if you believe in evolution or special creation. It just kind of all flows along there without saying how it was created, just that this happened and that happened. And then children were created that all have the great light within them. And so the second story is called Light of the World. And that's where the great light tells its children let your light shine because you're the light of the world. And a conversation ensues as to, well, what does that mean, let our light shine? And well, it's like, well, what gifts do you have? And, employ those gifts to help other people, to make them happy. And the story proceeds along where, well, there's this one little child of the light that thinks, I'm just going to keep my gifts for myself. And so he wouldn't share his gifts. In fact, sometimes he took from others. And so the other children didn't like him. And the light in him became darker and darker, and he's kind of by himself and unhappy. And then this old light, kind light came and sat next to him and befriended him and told him what his real name was, and which was Golden. And eventually, he kind of thought his name was Ugly. And eventually he began to believe this old light. And the light in him began to shine. And he then began to share his gifts with others. So that's the second story. And the third one is called Not Alone. And it's where this child is playing in the playground, kicks a ball into the woods, goes and chases the ball, and then gets distracted by a butterfly and chases that butterfly and eventually gets lost. And then it starts to get dark and she's scared and she lies down and cries herself to sleep. And in her sleep, she has a dream in which the great light appears to her and says, I'll never leave you. I'll always be with you. And then she wakes up and hears, her parents and others calling for her, and they come and find her and they say, well, you must have been scared being all alone. And she says, yes, I was scared, but I wasn't alone. And so those are basically the three stories.
Neat. Wonderful. I love this idea of helping kids know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
That there is something greater than us that loves us and cares for us and wants the best for us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
I do too. One of the things I noticed on your website is that you are donating all the profits from this to charity.
Right. Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
And you picked out a couple of charities that are very special to you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those charities?
Sure. One of them is CASA, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And my wife and I are CASAs. And what that means is we work or we developed a relationship with a child who's in foster care. And our role is to advocate for that child, to find out, what do you want, what do you need, and to make sure that the system is meeting those objectives, and that they're not just being pushed through without any real concern about what their desires are. It's a great program because these kids, a lot of times they get moved from house to house and their social workers change. And so we kind of become a constant in their life. And so that's one. And the other one is called Zeo International. And what they do is they work with orphans in third world countries, but they have a very unique approach. It was actually created by an African in Africa who's working with with a large NGO, and she began to think there's got to be an African solution to our orphan problem. And basically they group together orphans into kind of a little family of multiple ages and put them with usually a widowed mother, and they actually show them how to become self-sustaining over about 3-year time period, which is amazing. How can kids become self-sustaining? That is, they don't need to have ongoing financial aid. Mm-hmm. And it's just an amazing approach they have.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, what a wonderful way not only to bring a an important and an empowering message is to your kids, but also to spread that to kids all over the world who are in need of support. Purchasing Children of the Great Light. What a neat thing. You're helping your family. You're helping other kids too.
Thank you.
Yeah. We should tell everybody where they can go, Wayne, to find out more about Children of the Great Light and find out more about you.
Sure. Well, they can go to childrenofthegreatlight.com, and there it tells about the book and information about me and where they can buy the book, which you actually can't buy it on the website, but you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble and some other places and purchase the book.
Wonderful. We've had a really great time speaking to the author of Children of the Great Light. Our guest has been Wayne McDaniel. Wayne, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jed. I appreciate it.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Joining us on the line right now from Chicago in Illinois, she is the author of a number of great books. We're going to be speaking to her today about her beautiful picture book. It's called A Home for Sally. Please welcome to the show, Stanetta Anthony. Stanetta, how are you?
Hi, Jed. How are you? Doing good today.
I'm wonderful. I am here in the subterranean studios of the podcast, and my little adopted shelter dog, Augie, is sitting right next to me on the couch, making sure I don't make any mistakes or making sure I don't make too many mistakes.
Okay, well, I'm glad he's there with you.
He is. He's great. And, so I absolutely can relate to the feeling behind A Home for Sally. Can you tell us a little bit about the story and what inspired you to write it?
Well, A Home for Sally is the basic gist of it is about a special needs puppy. Her name is Sally. She was placed in a shelter by her former owner because she could no longer take care of her and her siblings. Mm-hmm. So after they were placed in the shelter, Sally went through some challenges while being in the shelter. All of the other dogs were being adopted, but they were considered quote-unquote normal. They had a normal appearance, but not Sally. She's missing a part. And so Sally gets bullied by dogs and humans alike. She goes through challenges of feeling inferior to other dogs because of her appearance. And so she goes through a lot. And she has a happy ending, but it speaks to, I believe, dogs or canines or any type of animals who are in a shelter. And they're just waiting to be adopted. And they're just going through, well, what about me? And that's some of the things that Sally, and that's one of the lines that's in Sally, A Home for Sally, which she says, what about me? Mm-hmm. Because she was what everyone wants, what every dog wants, what every cat or whatever animal wants that's in the shelter, and that's to be adopted. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's the gist of her story.
And I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that what Sally wants is what every human being wants too, is a forever home, a place where we feel loved and safe.
Yes, exactly. That's what she wants.
Now, was there a Sally in your life that inspired you to write this book?
No, not really. I was looking at a television program one day, and what inspired me is I'm always when I'm watching television and they show where they're featuring all of the pets to be adopted during National Adoption Month and everything. And one of the things that I noticed was they never brought on any animals or pets with disabilities. And I was like, they're featuring everyone, which is great because you want the message to be, okay, adoption, and we want to adopt. But I just never seen them bring out one. I'm saying personally, it may be someplace else, but I've just never seen them bring out a special needs animal. And I was like, okay, I know there's some and there's plenty of them, but where are they? Why aren't they being featured? Why aren't their stories being told? Why aren't they on the national circuit when dogs are being featured?
Yeah.
So I felt that we need to talk about, a person, even though it's a fictional book, I still believe that it just speaks to a lot of how the emotions of a canine feels.
And I think that this is a great way for parents and families to talk not only about dogs and cats with special needs, but also talk about human beings and the fact that just because another human being has different abilities or looks different, that person still can give love and deserves to be loved and deserves to feel loved and to feel at home.
Exactly. And it does speak to, even though it's about a dog, it can be equated to a person, because I feel like we all have some type of handicap, whether it's visible or not visible. But there's something that's a little unique and a little different about all of us.
Absolutely. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids on Instagram, and @JedleyMagic on X. We'd also love it if you would subscribe to the show. It really helps people discover the show when you subscribe. And, of course, we love the iHeartRadio app. We love Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods. We love every app that carries Reading with Your Kids. And if you're listening on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, let your local station manager know that you want to thank them for carrying Reading with Your Kids. We'd also love it if you would consider leaving us a 5-star review. Again, it is a great way to help people discover the show and join us in our mission. And when I say our mission, I mean the mission that you and I and so many others are both on to help families grow closer through reading. If you could leave a 5-star review on whatever app that you are listening to, we'd be so very grateful. Our website, readingwithyourkids.com, is a great place to go to check out our certified Great Read Wall of Fame. Read our blog. You can find all the episodes of the podcast there. And also, it's a great place to leave us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of Reading with Your Kids. It's also a great place for authors to go. There's an Authors Click Here button up at the top of the page. You can find out how you can be a guest on Reading with Your Kids and tell thousands and thousands of Kidlit fans all over the world about your great children's book. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Dr. Ron Unbar. Please be sure to check out the Life Guide for Teens, Harnessing Your Inner Power to Be Healthy, Happy, and Confident. Also want to thank Wayne McDaniel. Please be sure to check out Children of the Great Light. And we want to thank our friend Stanetta Anthony. Stanetta's, you can hear the full conversation with Stanetta at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can just use the search button up at the top of the page and search for Stanetta Anthony, or our episode called Filling Our Home with Love. Filling Our Home with Love. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
Oh!